from Vale, which is the last leveling quest of the original Final Fantasy XIV. And has some annoying mechanics to heal, but as long as your tank doesn't do anything stupid, it should be easy enough to heal with, even if your tank is good enough, just using your pet on anything but the first and third bosses. So, as per the normal, start with casting Protect and making sure that you have Aetherflow up. And when you get to the first mobs, some tanks will pull the frog as well as the two elf stool here. Well, I guess it's called Nyx technically, but it's a frog. Basically, like most dungeons, it consists of you using your dots followed by Bane, trying to remember names there, and then using your Aos to do the healing. And the only thing to watch for these mobs is the Nyxes have Laboured Leap, which will interrupt your casting, and you also have to watch where you stand because of the golden goo there, which if you stand on it, and my pet is out of the range to heal, which is not good. But if you're standing in the gold, you get a dot on you, and obviously that is not something you want ever to be doing. But other than that, there's nothing really too much to watch for except for the spouting of gold that you can see there. It should come up in just a second. Right there, it will knock you back, interrupt casting, and stuff like that. So you want to avoid being hit by it as many times as possible. So you just have to watch where you stand. Veil Wisps are just basic mobs that attack the tank, so you don't have to watch for them or do anything special about them other than your usual casting Bane after you use your dots. And continuing to cast Ruin whenever you're not dotting or if using Bane or healing. The big thing is to make sure you're not the one getting targeted. Although, that's not going to be the end of the world or anything, so. Also probably recommended to attack the same one as the tank. That's more of a DPS thing usually, but other thing is to be careful where you're standing for the exact reason that just happened there. I was close enough to the Nyx that it went for me over the tank who it hadn't seen. But it's a fairly easy thing to kill as long as you stay out of its Laboured Leap. For the Lilies of the Veil, they're basically the same as the Veil Wisps. I'm trying to think of the name, if it's just Vale Whisper. But basically the only thing to watch for them is their ranged instead of melee. Shouldn't really have any effect on you as a scholar, but that's not to say that you won't end up having to tank them if something goes wrong or anything. So after that we reach the first boss, which is Locksmith, who is an Ochu, who is surrounded by obviously the gold that you don't want to stand in, and has multiple items lying around called Morbol Fruit. Now for this fight you want to make sure that, one, you're not stepping on that. I know I made that mistake last time I was here. And watch for his debuff that he will put on you, which is called Gold Lung, that he just put on me there. It's good timing. Basically is a dot that you will have to obviously watch for purposes of your pet is not going to be doing healing, and it will stay on you until you eat a Morbol Fruit, which you usually wait until you have 2 stacks on before you eat. And other than that, he is generally a basic boss. You avoid his AoEs and stuff like that, and you should be fine. The main thing to keep in mind is making sure that you've left yourself a place with one of the fruits, because as you can see where the tank is, he is right beside one, and there's one right behind me. The main goal is to make sure that there's one near enough to everybody so that they can avoid, or you can avoid one person being stuck without a fruit and continuing the dot over fruit B, because it will start to mount up the damage. And axe him down. So for the next part is where it actually gets a bit tougher. And accidentally my map, but that's not really important. The reason it is tougher is because we will be coming across more Morbol Fruit. The difference between these ones is they actually hatch Morbol seedlings. I feel like I'm butchering that name. Which are these things here? They're very weak, but added up, they do a lot of damage to the tank. And some parties don't seem to realize that you can AoE, which will actually make the fight a lot longer than it should be. But it seems we're doing fairly well here. We've focused them down so that they haven't spawned. And this is another enemy that we have, which isn't really new, but it's a new version. If you've played any of the story, you've probably seen a Morbol on the world map. Or not world map, but in areas like Mordona and one of the shrouds, I'm not 100% sure which. Right there, that chest can actually contain a thing called a it's a Morbol Sprite, I think, which is a pet. So if you're a collector of like pets and mounts, this is the place to go to get one of the first ones that you can actually find in a dungeon. I have never once got it before, though. The next enemy you'll see are veiled bane mites, veiled bats, and veiled dynamites. The bats and dynamites are basic enemies that are nothing really to be worried about. And bane mites are for the most part the same, except they have a large AoE attack that they use right in front of them, which you'll have seen right at the start of the fight. It's nothing too much to worry about, but obviously it hurts if it hits. And as like most parts of the game, goals just use Bane and all your dots and keep up your Aether flow. Whilst obviously, I didn't mention this earlier, but spamming the macro to keep your ALs healing. And after that we are basically at the second boss, as soon as this fight is finished. And this second boss is the coin counter, who has a large set of skills that are annoying for basically everybody on the field in different ways. And I'll go through them as he uses them. There's 100 tons swing, which is his first one, which he uses in front of him and will hit everybody hard. And there's Glar, which unfortunately hit my Aos, which he does in a straight line. And it will paralyze you. And then there is Eye of the Beholder, which is a arced AoE, which does more damage. And then there is 100 tons swing, where he uses both hands, and that is painful. When he uses both hands, he is doing it in a circular one. When he's only using one hand, he's only hitting in front of him. And usually you try and dodge out of the way of it, but it can happen that you don't get out of the way in time. I hope I'm not in range of that. So basically, as a healer or a ranged class, you stay out of the way. And if you get the chance, which I am going to get, I think, although I'm going to move out of the way of that first, just to make sure. And luckily I can keep using my Aos to heal while I revive him there. It's a handy thing about the class. Which you wouldn't be able to do if you were any other healer, because obviously they wouldn't have a heal. Or wouldn't have a pet healing for them, I should say. But it can res during the fight. And despite a little problem with one of the DPS dying, it wasn't too bad of a fight. Now, if I could just stop accidentally opening the map, it would be perfect. basically for most of the rest of the dungeon it is just mobs that are the same that you've seen, and will continue being, use your dots on them, heal if you need to, and spread your dots with Bane. And then there's the Poison Peasant, which is one hasn't been here before, but it is basically like any of the enemies of its type. It will cast Malice, which reduces your TP, I think. Some versions reduce TP, some reduce MP. I think this is one that reduces MP though. Or TP, sorry. I'm not hoping to ever have to actually be able to show you that, because that would be a mistake on my part, but for the Bane Mites you have to watch, because they actually do more damage than most enemies in here. So as you can see, I've actually needed to heal, or come close to needing to heal anyway. And it's better to be safe than sorry. I guess just keep your air flow up still, and a fairly easy run so far. I've run this dungeon a couple times and had a lot more problems with people not dodging skills, people trying to tank way more than they actually can, or DPS not using AoE attacks when it's possible. And probably me not healing when I should have, but I should also cast this. Hopefully I get the one I want, and I didn't. I will do that before the boss. Now, at the next part, there's actually 2 gold vines, which I have seen some tanks try and tank both of them, and there's a lot more marbles, seedlings. So it can be a lot harder for a healer if the fruits are allowed to grow. Which, thankfully, this party doesn't seem to be wanting to let happen, but you definitely have to watch, because when they grow, if you're not careful, you will be the first one that they go for. And if you're healing, it's like me, where my healing is on a different side to me. Macro for my pets, it may end up healing you instead of the tank, meaning you may lose aggro. And that should be enough that I can concentrate on DPSing again, hopefully. Just things you have to be aware of when you're doing it, that you know when you can DPS and when you have to actually heal. And this is one of the more prevalent places that you might have to heal because of dots and the amount of enemies that can spawn. But as I say, this has been a fairly good run, so nothing too flashy is needed to happen. And we are one pull away from the final boss. And like before, these are more Bane Mites, so you do have to be careful as they hit harder. And not do what I just did and accidentally put on Cleric Stance after taking it off so you could heal. Yes, just continue spreading dots and keeping everybody alive, and you should be sweet to get through the dungeon. And this is the introduction to the final boss, which is a Moroboro, or Moroboro as they call it in this. Although it will always be a Moroboro to me. And it is called the Miser's Mistress. And it's basically like a mixture of a regular Moroboro and the first boss, the locksmith, in that it has the same sort of debuff, and it stacks up in a different way in here because of the fact that it's actually spread by one, an attack that it does, and two, through mobs that it can summon, which are like the seedlings that you can see, or you've seen on the way to here. And unlike the first one, you actually wait until 3, not 2 stacks of the buff, or debuff, before you heal. Or you cure it with the Moroboro fruit. So, and that is an example of where it's a pain to try and find one if you're right beside somebody. And here it actually summons Moroboro fruits, which are what it uses to grow the seedlings. And when it grows them, every time they hit you, you get 1 burst stack on you. Which I only actually found out recently myself, because I'd never seen them grown. So it was actually a good learning experience for me. The important thing to note is you probably don't actually have to worry all that much about controlling your pet, as for the most part they should be healing anyway, but that if you have my macro on, it can actually be a problem, like right there, because it was out of range. And there we go, that's that run done.